The airport was a symphony of hurried goodbyes and joyous hellos, a chaotic ballet I usually navigated with a practiced detachment. My usual routine involved a precise calculation of time, a deliberate avoidance of eye contact, and a quiet absorption of the human drama unfolding around me. I found a certain comfort in being the silent observer, a nameless face in the crowd, moving through my day with efficiency. Then, a sudden cascade of sound, a tumble of personal effects, broke through my carefully constructed bubble. Ahead of me, a woman stood frozen, her eyes wide with dismay as the contents of her overstuffed suitcase hemorrhaged onto the polished floor. Books, a vibrant silk scarf, a pair of worn leather boots, and what looked like a collection of exotic spices lay scattered like an unfortunate still life. Her hair, a rich chestnut color, fell in soft waves around her shoulders, framing a face that was both elegant and expressive. Her eyes, a striking shade of hazel, darted around with a mix of frustration and quiet determination, reflecting the overhead lights. She had a way of holding herself, even amidst the chaos, that bespoke an inner strength, a kind of contained energy. I watched for a moment, an unfamiliar impulse stirring within me. It wasn't pity, not exactly. More like a quiet recognition of a shared human moment, a sudden stumble in an otherwise organized life. Without much thought, I simply moved. I knelt down, a surprising warmth spreading through my chest as I began to gather the stray items. "Here," I murmured, handing her a small, ornate box that had rolled beneath a bench. "Looks important." She looked at me then, her initial surprise softening into a genuine, albeit slightly embarrassed, smile. "Oh, thank you," she said, her voice a low, melodic tone that resonated subtly. "You're an angel. This is quite a situation." We worked together, a silent, efficient team. My hands brushed hers as we folded the scarf, the fabric surprisingly cool against my skin. Her fingers were long and slender, nimble as they tucked a loose page back into a book. As the last item was neatly packed and her suitcase reluctantly clicked shut, she stood, extending a hand to me. "I'm Ellie," she offered, her gaze direct, unwavering. "Leah," I replied, a small smile touching my lips. It was just a simple gesture. Anyone would have done it. I tried to tell myself that, but the lingering warmth in my hand, the echo of her gaze, suggested something more. She thanked me again, her gratitude a tangible thing that seemed to hang in the air between us, a quiet hum amidst the airport's din. Then, with a final, appreciative nod, she was gone, swallowed by the stream of passengers. I found myself watching her disappear, a fleeting thought of her lingering, before I consciously pushed it aside, returning to my usual, pragmatic mindset. My flight was boarding after all. The scent of fresh coffee and the soft hum of computers were the familiar overtures to my workday. I prided myself on my routine, the predictability of my corporate environment a welcome counterpoint to the unpredictable world outside. My cubicle was a sanctuary of organized efficiency, and I settled into it with the comfort of an old friend. The morning was progressing as expected when the email arrived, a mandatory team meeting to welcome the new department head. A fresh face, a new dynamic. I usually approached such introductions with a professional interest, but little personal anticipation. Leadership changes were part of the corporate cycle. When the moment arrived and the meeting room door opened, I felt a jolt that went straight through me, an unexpected tremor that made my coffee cup clatter softly against the table. Standing there, radiating an unmistakable aura of confidence and quiet authority, was Ellie, the very same Ellie from the airport. Her eyes, those striking hazel eyes, swept across the room, pausing briefly on my face. A ripple of surprise, then a genuine, bright smile spread across her features. "Leah? Goodness, what a coincidence." Her voice, that melodic tone I remembered, cut through the professional quiet of the room. "Everyone, this is Leah," she began, her gaze still on me, a warmth in her expression. "She's already proven herself to be an invaluable asset. We met yesterday at the airport, and she rescued me from a truly embarrassing luggage mishap. I'm indebted to her kindness. My cheeks flushed, a sensation I rarely experienced. The universe, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of humor. What I had dismissed as a fleeting, anonymous interaction was now being broadcast, unexpectedly connecting us in this very public, very professional space. I managed a small, polite nod, maintaining a facade of professional composure, even as a surprising flutter of emotion stirred within me. This wasn't just a simple act of kindness anymore. It felt like something else entirely. After the initial introductions and the usual corporate pleasantries, Ellie moved around the room, greeting each team member. When she reached my desk, her smile softened. "It really is wonderful to see you again, Leah," she said, her voice dropping slightly, for my ears only. "I wasn't sure I'd ever get the chance to properly thank you. Just doing my part," I managed, the words feeling rather inadequate. We exchanged a brief, polite interaction, underscored by our shared, surprising recognition. But as she moved on, I could feel her presence, a quiet hum in the periphery of my awareness. The calm order of my day, I realized, had just been subtly, irrevocably altered. The first few days with Ellie as our department head were a fascinating study. She moved with a quiet efficiency, her decisions precise, her feedback insightful. I found myself observing her more than I usually would a new superior. Her focus was sharp, but she carried it with an approachable demeanor, her expressive eyes often softening when she engaged with a team member. There was a quiet strength in her, a natural grace in her movements, even as she navigated the complex spreadsheets and demanding meetings. My quiet admiration for her professional competence began to grow, an unbidden respect for her intellect and poise. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging project review, I noticed her staring out the window, a thoughtful, almost wistful expression on her face. The city, a sprawling canvas of steel and glass, seemed to overwhelm her in that moment. Hesitantly, I approached her desk. "Everything all right, Ellie?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. She turned, a slight sigh escaping her lips. "Yes, mostly. Just taking it all in. This city is quite a labyrinth, I confess. I'm still trying to find my bearings. Everything feels so new, so vast. I miss the familiarity of my old neighborhood coffee shop, the way the light fell just right on my kitchen table in the mornings." Her gaze was distant, a hint of vulnerability in her usually composed exterior. An unfamiliar urge stirred within me, a quiet pull to help. The quintessential homebody, the one who found comfort in the known, felt a surprising desire to guide her through this unfamiliar landscape. "I've lived here my whole life," I heard myself say, the words coming easily, naturally. "It can be a lot at first, but there are some hidden gems. If you ever need a guide, I wouldn't mind showing you some of the lesser-known spots, away from the usual tourist traps." Ellie's gaze met mine, a flicker of surprise, then a warmth that deepened the hazel in her eyes. "That's incredibly kind of you, Leah. I might just take you up on that." A small, genuine smile touched her lips, easing some of the tension from her shoulders. From that day forward, our professional interactions began to flow with an added ease. We found ourselves collaborating on tasks more frequently, our conversations stretching beyond project deadlines. A quiet understanding began to form, a subtle rhythm that felt both effortless and deeply engaging. It was more than just a working relationship. It felt like the careful laying of a foundation for something more. True to my word, I found myself mapping out our first excursion. I wasn't typically one for impromptu adventures, preferring the comfort of a well-researched itinerary, but with Ellie, something shifted. I sought out places that spoke to my own contemplative nature, hoping she might find the same solace in them. Our first stop was a tucked-away bookstore, its shelves groaning with forgotten tales and new releases, the air thick with the scent of old paper and roasted coffee. Ellie's eyes lit up as she browsed, her fingers tracing the spines of books, a quiet reverence in her movements that mirrored my own. We spent the afternoon wandering through a botanical garden, a green oasis in the heart of the bustling city. The delicate scent of jasmine mingled with the earthy aroma of damp soil, and the soft rustle of leaves provided a tranquil soundtrack. I watched Ellie as she admired a rare orchid, her expression one of pure wonder. She had a way of seeing the beauty in small details, a sensitivity I found unexpectedly captivating. Her smiles came easily then, genuine and bright, making my chest feel oddly warm, a sensation both new and comforting. We talked, not just about work, but about life, aspirations, the subtle hints of past experiences. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't anticipated, sharing anecdotes about my childhood, my quiet passions, my dreams. Ellie, in turn, revealed a quiet resilience beneath her composed exterior, a strength forged from navigating changes and challenges. She spoke of her family, her love for art, the quiet joy she found in a well-brewed cup of tea. There was a growing intimacy, not physical, but emotional, in these shared spaces. The comfortable silences between us became as significant as our conversations. I found myself looking forward to our weekend excursions, a warmth spreading through me that was both new and comforting. The city, once a symbol of her displacement, began to unfurl its charms under my guidance, and with each shared discovery, our bond deepened. I realized, with a quiet certainty, that something profound was happening, a subtle shift in the landscape of my own carefully constructed life. The office felt different now. The days no longer blurred into a monotonous rhythm. Ellie's presence had woven a new thread into the fabric of my routine, making each day feel a little brighter, a little more anticipated. Our professional collaboration had become seamless, almost intuitive. We anticipated each other's needs, often communicating with a glance across the meeting table, a silent understanding passing between us that others might have missed. It wasn't just in the big projects, though. It was in the small, everyday gestures. I'd arrive at my desk to find a particular herbal tea, carefully selected, placed beside my keyboard, a silent acknowledgement of a preference I'd once mentioned in passing. A few days later, I'd bring in a specific pastry from the bakery near my apartment, knowing it was the one she'd enjoyed on our last city excursion. These were small, thoughtful actions that transcended mere professional courtesy. They spoke of a deeper, more personal recognition. My internal world, usually a quiet, ordered space, began to hum with a new frequency. I found myself dissecting every interaction, every shared smile, every lingering glance. The sound of Ellie's voice, whether in a formal meeting or a casual conversation, seemed to resonate differently within me, stirring something I couldn't quite name. I noticed the way the light caught the strands of gold in her chestnut hair, the subtle curve of her smile when she was genuinely amused, the thoughtful furrow of her brow when she was concentrating. There was a magnetic pull, a current between us that I couldn't name, but I felt it in every quiet moment, every shared laugh. We developed a playful teasing, light-hearted banter that added a layer of personal connection to our interactions. "You know, Leah, you have a knack for finding the best obscure coffee shops," Ellie would say, a twinkle in her hazel eyes. "I think you might just be a secret urban explorer." "And you, Ellie, have a knack for turning a perfectly organized desk into a creative explosion," I'd counter, gesturing to the lively assortment of notes and sketches that now adorned her workspace. Our conversations were filled with these easy exchanges, these inside jokes that only we understood. The unspoken language between us was growing richer, deeper, drawing us closer with each passing day. The air around us, I realized, was always charged, always holding the promise of something more. The end-of-quarter gathering was a low-key affair, a casual celebration held at a trendy bar downtown. The atmosphere was relaxed, the music a soft murmur, and the drinks flowing gently, encouraging a looseness that rarely surfaced in the office. I usually kept my distance at these events, preferring to observe from the periphery, but tonight, something was different. The magnetizing pull I felt towards Ellie was stronger than ever, drawing me into her orbit. We found ourselves in a quiet corner, engaged in one of our characteristic deep conversations, our voices low against the general hum of the room. We were discussing a particularly challenging project, but the words felt like a mere backdrop to the electric current that vibrated between us. The subtle sway of the music, the warmth of the ambient light, and perhaps a glass or two of wine, loosened my usual inhibitions. I found myself looking at her, really looking, and seeing not just my department head, but a woman whose presence had become profoundly important to me. Her eyes held mine, and in their depths, I saw a reflection of my own longing, a shared vulnerability. There was a sudden, undeniable surge of feeling, a force that propelled me forward, without conscious thought. It was a brief lapse in my usual control, a moment of reckless abandon. I leaned in, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs that seemed to echo the music. My lips, almost on their own accord, found hers. It was a tentative touch, a question more than a declaration, born from that sudden, overwhelming surge of feeling. Her initial surprise was palpable, a brief stiffness in her posture. Then, a soft yielding. Her lips met mine with a hesitant warmth, awkward, a clumsy first step, but brimming with profound emotional intensity, a breaking of a dam that had held back a torrent of unspoken feelings. The world around us faded, dissolving into a singular point of connection. When we finally broke apart, it was only by a breath, our eyes still locked. Her gaze was wide, searching mine, reflecting a mix of shock and something else, something tender and undeniably reciprocal. A shared breath, a lingering gaze. The world felt both utterly still and wildly spinning, a symphony of unspoken emotions. My heart hammered, a joyful, terrified drumbeat against my chest. Waking up the next morning was a peculiar sensation, a dizzying cocktail of exhilaration and dread. The memory of the kiss, vivid and potent, played on a loop in my mind. The warmth of her lips, the surprised yielding, the sheer emotional force of that single, reckless moment. Had I made a terrible mistake? Had I jeopardized everything? The office air, usually a familiar comfort, felt thick, charged with something unspoken, something both exhilarating and terrifying. Our first interaction was strained. Our usual easy rhythm was disrupted, replaced by a nervous tension. Our eyes would meet across the room, then quickly dart away, like magnets repelling each other even as they yearned to connect. I could feel the weight of the unspoken hanging between us, a heavy, almost suffocating silence. My mind raced, replaying the moment, analyzing every nuance of Ellie's reaction. Did she regret it? Was she angry? The fear of having misread the signals, of having overstepped an invisible boundary, gnawed at me. My internal world, usually so calm and ordered, was now a tempest of doubt and speculation. I retreated into myself, trying to project a semblance of normalcy, even as my insides churned. Ellie, too, seemed quieter, more reserved than usual. She avoided direct eye contact, her focus seemingly entirely on her work, yet her demeanor suggested introspection, not rejection. There was a quiet thoughtfulness in her expression, a hint of something unresolved that mirrored my own turmoil. She wasn't angry, I surmised, but she was certainly affected. And that, in itself, was a kind of hope, a fragile thread in the swirling storm of my anxieties. The silence, however, was deafening, demanding an answer I wasn't sure I was brave enough to give. The silence became unbearable. Each stolen glance, each avoided conversation, each moment of unspoken tension felt like a stone weighing me down. I couldn't function properly. My carefully constructed routine, my professional composure, all of it felt flimsy, on the verge of collapsing under the weight of my unaddressed feelings. After a day of agonizing over the silence, I knew I couldn't leave things in this suspended animation. I had to confront it, to be honest, regardless of the outcome. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I waited for Ellie to finish her last meeting of the day. The office was emptying, the usual chatter fading into a quiet hum. I walked over to her desk, my hands clammy, but a fierce resolve burning within me. She looked up, her hazel eyes widening slightly as she saw me approach. A flicker of apprehension crossed her face, quickly replaced by a quiet composure. "Leah," she said, her voice soft, almost a question. "Ellie," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt in my hands, despite the chaotic drumming in my chest. About last night. It wasn't a mistake for me. I've grown to care for you in a way I didn't expect. A way that is profound. That kiss was an expression of something I've been feeling, something I haven't quite understood until now. I looked directly into her eyes, laying my vulnerability bare, no room for misinterpretation. The words, once so terrifying, now felt freeing, liberating. Ellie listened intently, her expression unreadable at first, a mask of thoughtful consideration. The silence stretched, a breathless eternity, before a gentle smile slowly spread across her face. It was a smile that reached her eyes, softening their earlier apprehension. "Oh, Leah," she murmured, her voice laced with a tenderness that brought tears to my own eyes. I felt it too, more than I've allowed myself to admit, even to myself. The confusion, the unexpectedness of it all. I've been wrestling with it all day. She paused, her gaze holding mine, a deep understanding passing between us. Your kindness at the airport, your quiet strength at work, the way you showed me this city, it all built up. I didn't know what to call it or what to do with it. A shared sigh of relief escaped us both, a collective release of tension that had coiled tightly in the room. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of a departing workday, a new, unspoken understanding settled between us. It was a beginning, fragile yet hopeful, built on vulnerability, trust, and a profound, undeniable connection. The journey had just truly begun. Our relationship, once a hesitant, unspoken current, now began to flow with a newfound tenderness and openness. We moved with a quiet discretion in the office, maintaining our professional decorum, but the knowing glances, the shared smiles, the subtle brush of hands as we passed in the hallway spoke volumes to us both. Outside of work, our world expanded. Our conversations deepened, moving beyond the casual banter to discussions about our dreams, our fears, the quiet corners of our hearts we rarely exposed. Ellie, with a newfound trust, began to share more about her past. She spoke of the challenges she'd faced, the unexpected turns her life had taken, the vulnerabilities she carried beneath her composed exterior. I found myself becoming a quiet harbor for her, a source of unwavering strength and comfort. My listening was a profound act of care, my presence a testament to her worth. In turn, through Ellie's acceptance and her own vulnerability, I found a deeper sense of self-acceptance. The quiet observer I had always been began to find her voice, learning to express the depths of my own emotions, to embrace the joy and complexity of caring for another person so deeply. There were subtle acknowledgments from the world around us, not always explicit, but often felt. A knowing look from a colleague, a gentle query from a friend about my newfound happiness. We navigated these moments with quiet grace, our focus remaining steadfastly on the evolving landscape of our shared connection. The external noise seemed distant, irrelevant, compared to the vibrant symphony of our hearts. We spoke of futures, not just our individual paths, but the interwoven tapestry we were beginning to weave together. We shared dreams of small adventures, of quiet evenings, of building a life that reflected the depth of our bond. Each day felt like laying another stone in the foundation of something solid, something enduring. It wasn't always easy. Opening up, truly opening up, was a process of constant vulnerability. But with Ellie, it felt like coming home. Years have a way of softening the sharp edges of memory, yet the day I met Ellie at that bustling airport, and then again in the sterile confines of our office, remains as vivid as a photograph. I look back at the woman I was then, a creature of habit, a careful observer, comfortable in the predictable rhythms of her life, and I hardly recognize her. Ellie had, quite simply, opened my world, not by tearing it down, but by gently expanding its horizons. The once reserved observer has found her voice, not in grand pronouncements, but in the quiet confidence of knowing she is truly seen, truly cared for. Ellie, in turn, found a quiet harbor in me, a place of solace where she could shed the weight of expectations and simply be. The ease we found in each other wasn't a sudden, dramatic shift, but a gentle, consistent comfort, applied through shared laughter, understanding glances, and the steady presence of unconditional care. Our life together is a tapestry woven with mundane details and profound moments. A quiet evening at home, the scent of a meal simmering on the stove, Ellie sketching in her journal while I read by the lamp. A weekend trip to a new town, exploring antique shops and local cafes hand in hand. We still have our disagreements, our moments of quiet frustration, but they are always met with a commitment to understanding, to finding our way back to each other. Our story was still being written, each day a new page turned, filled with the quiet promise of a connection that had found its way home. There was no grand, definitive ending, only a sense of hopeful continuity, an open horizon stretching before us. The journey of care and discovery was ongoing, an endless landscape we would navigate together, forever changed by the unexpected connection that began with a spilled suitcase and a simple act of kindness.